Our story begins with the appearance of a huge monster that was destroying a city and several people were fleeing for their lives. In addition to those people, our protagonist Ye Tian was also the one seeing the monster. He just managed to stand there staring at the monster before a kind of lightning bolt went through his arm and struck him, making him scream as a huge explosion of light happened. He suddenly woke up in bed, shocked by what he had just dreamt, but he thought he had just awakened his talent. He remembers the things he's seen so far and wonders if those hallucinations were caused by his awakening process. 100 years ago, countless space portals opened up on Earth, and ferocious dimensional beasts invaded the planet and threatened humanity's survival. But the dimensional energy also stimulated humanity's talents, and a small number of humans awakened their talents, which led humanity into the great age of talent. And of course our protagonist would also awaken his own talent in the future, but to find out what his ability is, you need to be subscribed to this channel so that you can receive more notifications of future Manuka summary videos. Ye Tian heard a voice asking him if he had finished and been able to awaken his talent, and just as expected, he had awakened his powers and ended up with a low-tier talent. Ye Tian was worried because it looked like he was screwed for the rest of his life because he couldn't become a martial artist with such a simple talent, and wondered how he could protect his sister in the future like this. Ye Tian's sister enters the room asking how his talent evaluation went, and Ye Tian replies that it was obviously excellent, making her happy, and he assures her that there was no need to worry because her brother would certainly become a super powerful martial artist. His sister celebrates and says that she made Ye Tian's favorite dish because she wanted to celebrate his awakening in this way, but even with his sister calling for him to go soon, the protagonist gets stuck in place when he suddenly sees his sister use status window before his eyes. The details said that you had a cultivation talent and a low-tier frozen talent that was still dormant, but suddenly when Ye Tian tried to touch the screen, it changed and the detail about the frozen talent disappeared. While Ye Tian was still confused, you pulled him by the wrist and told him to hurry because the food was getting cold, but the protagonist again saw another status window, this time saying that both the cultivation talent and the frozen one could be copied. The system asked if he would like to copy her talents, making him curious to discover that he could copy other people's talents, which meant that his situation was no longer a hopeless case. In the kitchen, Yu says she made Ye Tian's favorite dish, which was roast pork, and he thanks her. The two of them eat and Ye Tian continues to reflect on how copying talents was a miraculous ability, but he didn't want to test his ability on his sister, and that's why he chose no. After all, her base talent was better than his and her ice talent was extremely rare. Once Yu had awakened, she would certainly be able to dominate her opponent using her powers. Ye Tian thought of his parents and mentally told them that if they were seeing this now, they could rest in peace now. The protagonist went out and decided to start testing what he had just discovered, and then realized that the distance to be able to see other people's talents was only 3 meters away, which was a rather small distance. All the talents there were pretty bad, so Ye Tian was determined to copy a medium-tier talent at least. He should be able to take a look at the academy now that he's awakened a talent, even if it's a low-tier one, but copying someone else's talent could make his own talent change, so Ye Tian couldn't apply to an academy that requires the evaluation of talent. So he has a new idea and decides to go to the Linhai Academy's 5th base. Ye Tian thought that there should be several people with medium-tier talents in that academy, but as the first talent he had awakened, he would certainly be stronger than all of them in the future. 10 days later, at the Linhai base, the 5th Academy and the number 3 Martial Stadium, where a voice starts talking about how to become a warrior, they first had to become an apprentice, and to be an apprentice, they had to master physical training. So that man says that everyone would need to learn physical training from him. This would be considered a success if they managed to condense a cyclone in front of their chests, and the students agreed, including Ye Tian, who was taking part in the practice. On the way, one student faints and others become exhausted, but the teacher shouts at them to ignore those useless pieces of garbage because they will only become real warriors when they form a cyclone. Ye Tian became nervous because he couldn't condense anything and wondered if it was because his talent was too low. The teacher ended the day's training and shouted that they were the worst students he had ever had to teach. He says that they should all look up to Qing Dong as an example so that they can try harder and stop being so useless. At the end of the class, Ye Tian went out to talk to Zhang Bao, one of his classmates, and asked who this Qing Dong was, and Bao replied that he wasn't just anyone, as he had become a warrior after a fortnight and was now the dean's disciple, receiving personal training from him. Ye Tian says that his level must be very high indeed, and Bao shows him what looks like a signature from Dong himself. Bao says that when he becomes as powerful as the dean, he wonders how many months' rent that signature could be worth to sell. Suddenly, they find a crowd saying that the veteran Dong was coming, and he appears in the middle of the people where everyone is asking for autographs and wanting to talk to him. Even Bao runs out to ask Dong for autographs, and Ye Tian is excited to see Dong too. Dong thanks everyone for their support and compliments, while Ye Tian analyzes Dong and discovers that he has a medium-tier talent, so he approaches him to say hello, interested in his ability. Dong tells everyone to stay calm because he was there at the request of the teachers so that he could encourage everyone. everyone, and they should forget about the autographs because it could become a joke if their friends found out. Ye Tian asks if he could at least have a handshake, and Bao agrees that it would be really nice, so Dong shakes hands with Bao, the other students in the queue, and finally Ye Tian approaches to shake Dong's hand. Ye Tian manages to copy his talent successfully, and so, when he is alone later, he sees the system asking him if he would like to merge the medium-tier talent, and wonders if merging was a good or bad idea. Ye Tian remembers the dream he had, and although he's worried, he decides to try it out anyway and ends up using the skill, feeling deep pain. Ye Tian wondered what was going on and why fusing talents was so painful, but finally he managed to finish the fusion, and so he now had a medium-tier talent. Ye Tian was able to be reborn and changed his tier, which meant that the pain was worth it. The system warned him that the recharge time for the talent copier skill was 30 days, leaving him surprised that there was such a long time to be able to copy things from month to month. Ye Tian thought that was a really scary talent, so he decided he should try the physical training the teacher had taught him that day, and he started to become capable of creating a cyclone, realizing that having a medium-tier talent, physical training was super easy. Ye Tian realized that he was like an elite warrior now, and decided that he would become the best of warriors. A month later, several things have happened since then. Although Ye Tian had become an apprentice, he still had a long way to go to become a true warrior, and as Dong was receiving lessons from the dean himself, it was obvious that he would improve much faster than he did. But suddenly, as he was walking down the street, a monster attacked a civilian behind him, killing the father of a child before his eyes. Seeing a monster killing a person, the other people shouted for everyone to run, and Ye Tian was still surprised to see a monster in person for the first time. When the monster tries to attack the child, Ye Tian saves the child's life, but realizes that the monster is too fast and won't be able to escape in time. But suddenly a man with a sword appears and attacks the monster, sending it flying away. The man apologizes for being late, and Ye Tian asks who he is. The man replies that everyone calls him Captain Gale Wolf, and tells them to leave the Silver Moon Wolf in his hands while Ye Tian take care of protecting the girl. The protagonist agrees and sees Gale Wolf picking a fight with the wolf, and Ye Tian covers the girl's eyes, telling her not to see anything. Gale Wolf realizes that this monster was really strong, and that as expected of a Silver Moon Wolf, one shouldn't underestimate its speed, but he still had allies on his side to help him. Suddenly, other people appear to confront the wolf, but it runs away, causing everyone to run after it and attack it. They wonder if the wolf is dead, but Gale Wolf tells them that it would go into bloodthirsty mode and they should be careful. A man is sent away, and so is Gale Wolf. They realize that the wolf was trying to run away, but Gale Wolf replied that it was alright because that monster couldn't run away. After all, it was an archer who was waiting for him, and she fired an arrow in his direction, hitting him squarely and knocking him down. Gale Wolf said that it was too weak to withstand them and praised the excellent aim of the archer who dealt the final blow to the wolf. Ye Tian was surprised to see that he could now see the talents of the monster that was killed, as it had a low-tier blood talent and a beginner-level speed talent. The people who defeated the monster are relieved that it's all over because fast-type monsters were a pain to deal with and they should go out drinking now that they finished their work, but Gale Wolf shouts for everyone to be careful when the wolf suddenly gets up. He tells everyone to stand well back when the wolf roars loudly. They comment that monsters were really terrifying and mention that wolf's tenacity, and ask their captain what they should do now. Gale Wolf replied that they didn't need to worry about that because the wolf was very weak now and they could leave everything in its hands, and told Ye Tian that the area wasn't safe and that he should leave immediately and not just stand there. But the protagonist thought that this was a perfect opportunity and took off running, passing Gale Wolf and leaving him shocked when Ye Tian lunged at the wolf and hit him. But not only that, Ye Tian manages to successfully steal the monster's talent, and with that Ye Tian keeps hitting the monster with his bare hands while the system tells him several times that he was able to successfully steal the wolf's talent. But it wasn't long before Gale Wolf approached to tell him to stop because the wolf was already dead, leaving Ye Tian surprised that he had managed to kill the monster with his bare hands. Despite this, he was surprised that his ability to copy talent even worked on a monster like that wolf. Gale Wolf said that now they should clean up the mess and sent 3 of his men to take care of the bodies of the man and the wolf, and also told the archer to take care of the little girl. Gale Wolf then tells Ye Tian that he can't wait for him to join his squad in the future, and says that he should look for him when he has become a martial warrior. Ye Tian agrees with them and goes home to clean himself of all the blood, as his sister would certainly be worried if she saw this. Ye Tian is relieved to see that Yu is resting peacefully at home and thinks about how that day was the first time he saw a monster with his own eyes, and it was 100 times scarier than the monsters in the stories. But to protect his sister, he needed to become a martial warrior as soon as possible. He wondered if the monster's talent could fuse with a human's body, and although it was possibly more painful than the fusion of the previous talent, and there was also the possibility of putting his own life at risk, he still needed to get stronger to protect the people who were important to him. No matter what and no matter what the cost, Ye Tian intended to get stronger. Ye Tian starts with the speed talent, and just as expected, he feels a deep pain in his bones, and it seems as if they are breaking off piece by piece, and every limb of his body seems to be aching. But not only that, he was suddenly shocked to realize that his legs had been broken and wondered if it was because the copy of the talent had failed, so he ended up losing consciousness. When Ye Tian wakes up again, he is shocked to realize that his legs are normal again, but not only that, but his body feels much lighter. A status window appears and says that his talent level was still average, but his speed talent was beginner level, making it clear that his copy was a real success. The scene cuts to the forest of the 5th Academy, where Ye Tian put his speed skill into practice by running through the forest, being amazed at how incredible the Silver Moon Wolf's speed really was. Doing the teacher's training, he thought his speed was comparable to that of a warrior now, but overall his skills were far from being truly powerful. Ye Tian considers that it would be good if he could speed up his cultivation, then suddenly Bao appears, and he says that he was surprised that he couldn't find his friend at the academy. After all, he was secretly training in the forest. Bao touches Ye Tian and is shocked that he was as hard as stone with his training, and asks if he has already become an apprentice, and the protagonist agrees. Bao asks if he'd like to improve his powers faster, and Ye Tian asks if he knows a trick for that, and he asks back if he's ever drunk the blood of a ferocious beast before. The protagonist denies it, and Bao replies that to be honest, he improved faster than Ye Tian because he drank some, which leaves the protagonist shocked that the blood of a beast could actually do that. He's disappointed because there was a lot of Silver Moon Wolf blood that time before, and yet he didn't know it could be that important. Bao then says that there was a way to get fierce beast blood and asks if he'd like to try it. Ye Tian asks how he would do that, and so he finds out that the authorities at the seafront base have opened up a wilderness area outside the city for the 5th Academy to carry out tests, and the prize for that test was the blood of a ferocious beast. Ye Tian asked what the level of that wilderness was, and Bao replies that it's quite low because those ferocious beasts have been eradicated. Only one descendant of a ferocious beast remained, and it was a wild beast, which makes the protagonist excited to try. Bao gets excited and says that he could join his team so that they could defeat the ferocious beast together, which makes the protagonist stop to think about it. Bao asks what was wrong with that because he only said it because he was a good friend, and Ye Tian replies that he could join Bao at a later date and shouldn't worry about it. Bao is disappointed because he thought they were close enough to work together and didn't know he could be that cruel, but although the protagonist tries to leave, he tells him to wait for him because even though they're not on the same team, they could still be friends. Ye Tian thought that it was easy to stand out in a team, and if his talent ended up being exposed, it would be a great disaster, hence his decision to stay alone. He intended to take the blood of the ferocious beast and become a warrior, even if he had to do it completely alone. A month later, at the 5th Academy, the instructor asks Ye Tian why he went to sign up for the exam when he hadn't even received an invitation and asks if someone leaked the information, and the protagonist replies to the teacher that he had already become a martial artist and that meant he was qualified to sign up. The teacher commented that he wished these brats could at least live a little longer, but it seemed that all they wanted to do was die. He hands over a waiver of responsibility for his life and explains that if Ye Tian intended to take the exam, he should sign a waiver of responsibility for his own life. The teacher says that if he was afraid of dying, then he should leave and not waste his time, but Ye Tian laughs quietly. The teacher asks if they really thought that this exam was designed for brats like them and that they would surely regret it. The scene cuts to Ye Tian's house when he wakes up looking for her brother, is surprised to see food on the table and wonders if her brother was the one who did all this and if it was a special day. She is surprised to see a message on the table from her brother who would be away for an event lasting 3 days, hoping that he wouldn't be in danger after all this time away. At the same time, Ye Tian was with the other students taking part in the competition, and he was surprised that there were so many people there. Bao said that it was because they were all people who came from the 5 main academies, and soon a man appeared and approached them, seeing that they were from the 5th Academy, and asked if the trash from that horrible academy really dared to take the exam. Another man tells the first that he could hunt both beasts and other humans during the exam, so the more weaklings there are, the better, and he laughs because the weak should feel blessed to be hunted by the strongest. Bao tells him that that was Mo Xiaobei, one of the geniuses of the 1st Academy, and also the strongest of the younger generation of the Mo family. Ye Tian replied that it didn't surprise him that he was so arrogant. Suddenly, Xiaobei's companion asks who the man was who was approaching them and how he dared to go into the camp with his sword drawn, and the man who approached told Xiaobei to come closer because he intended to cut him to pieces. Xiaobei wondered if that man really intended to lose again, and it looked like a battle was about to begin. Ye Tian asks who that man was, and Bao replies that it was Li Yunqing, a genius swordsman from the 2nd Academy who was defeated in the past by Xiaobei. Xiaobei's companion says that they were all really blind for thinking that Yunqing could win, but the protagonist decides to start cheering for Yunqing out of the blue, leaving Yunqing himself confused and wondering why Ye Tian was cheering for him and if he wasn't afraid of Xiaobei at all because it was a bit embarrassing. Suddenly, a voice from the loudspeaker said that fights weren't allowed outside the wild zone and aggressors would be disqualified from the test, prompting Yunqing to say that he'd let Xiaobei live for now, but when they were in the wild zone, he'd find a way to wipe him out. Xiaobei laughs because he seemed like an undisciplined person, and then Yunqing approaches Ye Tian to ask his name after he had the courage to cheer for him. Ye Tian introduces himself, and Yunqing is surprised that he has a cool name. And then, the competition begins, so Bao says that he would need to find his team so that he can meet Ye Tian again later, and wishes him good luck. The first academy would start first, then those from the second academy, and so those from the fifth academy would be the last to go. Yunqing wished Ye Tian good luck and left, and so the protagonist set off on his journey to get through the competition. Ye Tian found a place that should be hidden enough, and now that Ye Tian had been able to steal the fencing ability, he began to make the fusion. Although it always hurt a lot, the protagonist was starting to get used to it because he had been through it twice, and it was also that he could get stronger. Now, Ye Tian could use his fencing skills, and his status now indicated that his swordsmanship was of medium level 2. All 4 academies entered the wilderness area, and finally the 5th academy began to enter as well. Entering the wilderness area, Ye Tian soon came across a large snake monster that he had to face using his sword, killing it quickly with his swordplay. He easily got a free point, and it was indeed a wild beast that appeared to be quite weak, but according to the rules of the test, the more wild beasts they killed, the higher their rank. He wondered how many points it would take to be able to take first place, and apparently it was written that it took 3 times the blood of a medium-level feral beast and 100,000 yuan. There was still a long way to go, but in any case he intended to keep working to hunt down more wild beasts. Suddenly, Ye Tian heard a cry for help, and as he approached, he realized that the person asking for help was Bao, who was begging not to die. After all, he hadn't even found a wife yet. Bao was being attacked by a wolf, so Ye Tian intervened by shooting an arrow at the wolf to save his life. The protagonist approaches him and asks if he could give up the points to him, but Bao says he should run away because he would be no match for the wolves all at once. But Ye Tian continues to face the wolves anyway, using his talent for speed as well as his talent for fencing, leaving Bao amazed at how powerful Ye Tian has become. Ye Tian asks if it was alright to take the wolf's teeth, and Bao agrees that they were all his. The protagonist asks if he really intended to continue in that finished state, and Bao replies that he was ready to give up the competition now. The test this time was too dangerous, and he should be content just because he had managed to stay alive for so long. All his teammates were injured, so he needed to get out and get them out quickly, and at least one of them should stay alive. Ye Tian replied that it seemed to be the only way, but Bao asked his friend to wait because there was a fake ferocious beast living in the forest and he should be careful. The level of danger among the monsters started with a ferocious beast, moved on to a false one, and finally to a wild beast, which meant that it was the second level of monster danger in that region. Bao says that he heard that the guys from the first academy were teaming up against a striped snake that was over 10 meters long, and rumor has it that it was on the level of a fake ferocious beast. Bao tells him that it was worth 500 points, leaving Ye Tian surprised and asking in which direction it was now, and Bao points out that it was to the southeast. The protagonist sets off quickly in that direction, determined to get those 500 points and kill him so that he can take first place, prompting Bao to tell him to be careful. The protagonist runs in that direction and stops walking when he finds several bodies scattered on the ground, and he recognizes that it was the uniform of the first academy. Ye Tian realized that there was a battle raging ahead and set off in that direction, soon encountering what appeared to be the fake ferocious beast. Xiao Bei guides the other warriors and tells them all to take the beast because they need to kill it, and they really want to get the 500 points. One warrior tells them that the fake ferocious beast was starting to lose its stamina and they should end things now or never. Xiao Bei lunges at the monster and tells it to leave everything in his hands, and his sword hits the monster square in the head. But it soon ends up being sent too far with one move, but Xiao Bei was happy that the 500 points would be his, and the monster falls to the ground. Ye Tian was frustrated because he was too late, and when Xiao Bei returned to the dead monster, the other warriors praised him for getting the 500 points. Xiao Bei was very pleased to be in first place in the challenge, but to everyone's surprise, the monster awakens in rage mode with a visible bloodlust to kill everyone around it, which leaves Xiao Bei frustrated. This makes them all realize that this wasn't a fake angry beast, but a real ferocious beast, which makes the warriors nervous about chasing the monster in that state, but Xiao Bei agrees that they need to go after it because it was the kind of monster that would be worth 1,000 points. They decide to hurry because they would end up giving an advantage to other participants if they didn't chase the monster right now. Xiao Bei thinks that the monster has become very weak after its attacks, and so they couldn't let anyone come across it now, or all their efforts would be in vain. Ye Tian never thought that a ferocious beast could be worth 1,000 points before, and says that it was a pity because he was certainly much faster than those warriors, and so using his speed talent at full power, he quickly shoots ahead of everyone. Ye Tian realizes that the people from the first academy haven't arrived yet, and he could use this time to find the monster. He notices the mucus secreted by the striped snake left behind and realizes that it must have been hiding nearby, which makes him happy because then the 1,000 points would be all his. Ye Tian could smell the stench of the viper quite intensely, and it seemed that it must be somewhere near there. Ye Tian soon found it and realized that it was trying to drink something. After all, it shouldn't be normal water, but he decides to put that aside hide because he needs to get his 1,000 points first of all, and so he sets off to attack his opponent, but the snake quickly realizes him, surprising him because in fact the monster was strangely faster than it looked. Ye Tian is sent flying by the counterattack, but the battle against the snake continues and he manages to pierce its eyes, giving him time to attack the monster again with his sword and tear its body apart. Finally, the snake falls to the ground after receiving such an impact, and the protagonist sighs, realizing that monsters were very strong indeed, and he would never have been able to kill it if Xiaobei's group hadn't weakened it beforehand. Ye Tian approaches the snake wondering what liquid it was drinking earlier, but he realizes that it shouldn't matter what it is. If a monster was after it, it must mean that it was some kind of treasure, so he decides to take some first and worry about it later. Ye Tian also decided to take the snake's eye because it would serve as proof of its death, and it seemed that the blood from a monster's heart was really valuable. He also managed to take some of that strange liquid, even though he had no idea what it could be. But whatever it was, he couldn't allow Xiaobei to get his hands on those things. The points he'd gotten so far were more than enough to put himself in first place, so it was time for him to leave that space. When Ye Tian left, later Xiaobei and his group arrived, surprised because their eyes had been taken and their hearts were also full of blood. The only thing left inside was the cadaver, and they asked Yinqing what they should do, but Yinqing was furious, wondering who dared to steal his 100-point trophy, promising that he would destroy this thief. Ye Tian was watching the whole discussion, and when the warriors arrived, the warriors told Yinqing that the person who had stolen his points had probably gone into hiding and asked what they should do now. Yinqing says that they should investigate everyone who might have seen the thief because they would never allow him to escape so easily. The warriors agreed with their master's orders, and Ye Tian realized that he would have to hide for a while longer. He quickly ran away, knowing that eventually everyone would discover him. After all, when Ye Tian handed in the parts he had collected for the points calculation at the end of the test in 3 days' time, everyone would know that he was responsible for killing that monster. So he needed to use the remaining time to be able to focus on cultivation and quickly improve his strength by finding a place to hide. The protagonist wondered how much more powerful he could become if he drank that monster's blood, and as he drank it, Ye Tian realized that it had to be the most disgusting thing he had ever tasted. Still, it was a small price to pay to become stronger and protect his sister. So he drinks the liquid completely, and in parallel Yu even sneezes, wondering who it was that was talking about her all of a sudden. Returning to the protagonist, he realizes that a great change has begun to take place in his body. Ye Tian realized that he was increasing his powers and cultivation speed by almost 4 times, and it was no wonder that Dong and the others were getting so strong so quickly. It seemed that in addition to their own talents, they also needed the help of external substances to be able to reach that great level of power, which was good because then they could stop to cultivate as much as possible during the remaining 2.5 days. So, 3 days later, the warriors were handing over the collected points and marking everything that had been collected. Yinqing also arrived and asked the teacher to calculate the points he had collected, so he got 195 points, leading the other students surprised. Soon Xiaobei also arrives, who comments that 195 points is no big deal and asks how they could be so surprised. Xiaobei says that he really overestimated Yinqing and asks if he really thought he was so qualified to challenge him when he didn't even get 200 points. Xiaobei asks the teacher to calculate his points now and shockingly announces that he got 427 points, leaving the others surprised because the difference between them was gigantic. Yinqing accuses Xiaobei of having stolen points from other people, and he laughs, replying that he only stole with his own skills if that was the case. Some girls congratulate Xiaobei because surely first place was entirely Xiaobei's in that case, but Xiaobei replies that first place should surely get over 1,000 points, leaving everyone surprised and wondering how that could be possible. They speculate that all the living students should have appeared at this point in the championship, and the teacher agrees because anyone else who hasn't yet appeared should possibly have died, which should make Xiaobei in first place to stay in the test. But soon Ye Tian arrives too and hands over the points analysis to the teacher, realizing that they were the eyes of a monster. He asks what his total points were and she replies that he got 1,163 points, congratulating him on getting first place in the practical test, and the rewards would be 3 bottles of monster blood and 100,000 yuan in cash. Bao congratulates Ye Tian on winning first place, which leaves Yinqing surprised and wondering how he managed to achieve something like that. Xiaobei realizes that the thief has finally shown up and is curious to realize that it was one of the delinquents from the 5th Academy. Xiaobei orders an investigation so that they can find out everything there is to know about Ye Tian, and meanwhile Bao says that his friend Ye Tian has really done something impressive. Now their 5th Academy could go so far as to come first, taking the practical test and their victory home. The girls agree that it was impressive because they hadn't even imagined that something like this could really happen, and ask how he managed it. The teacher complains that Ye Tian was an arrogant brat, and Bao also asks the teacher why he didn't seem so happy when Ye Tian managed to bring glory to the 5th Academy. The teacher replied that he had offended and angered a powerful family like the Mo's, and feared that Ye Tian might soon die a sudden certain death. So the ranking table from the practical test that time is on display for everyone to see, and they also take the opportunity to photograph everyone who passed the test. They congratulate everyone again, especially the 3 who came first and were able to receive their prizes. Xiaobei says that Ye Tian must have had a lot of guts to dare steal something like that from him, and the protagonist agrees and says that he could say the same about Xiaobei too. Yuxing asked if Xiaobei could at least remember what he had said to him a little while earlier too, because just like Xiaobei, Ye Tian stole points using his own skill, and there should certainly be no problem with that. Xiaobei asks who Yuxing thought was stronger between him and Ye Tian, and Yuxing suggests that they could find out during the battle itself, and Ye Tian agrees because if Xiaobei had the time, he might be happy to carry out his request. Xiaobei was very interested in this, and Ye Tian thought that when you became the target of a person like Xiaobei, there was no escape. The only way out now was to become so powerful that he couldn't dare challenge him again. Ye Tian returns home and Yu runs to hug him when she sees him, asking what took him so long and where he was all this time. She assures him that he hasn't been hurt and checks his body, and the protagonist replies that he was perfectly fine but was able to bring gifts for you, which makes her very happy. She is surprised that he has brought too much money home, seeming to have enough money for Ye Tian to get married. He is confused by her comment and explains that this money was all used so that she can use it for her tuition and living costs, and she is surprised. She's also happy because it means they can eat meat every day from now on. Yu asks what that strange liquid was that he also brought, and Ye Tian replies that he didn't know either, so he ended up bringing a book with pictures of treasures so he could find out what it was. Yu said he wanted to see it with him too, and the protagonist was shocked to discover that it was the elixir of the Earth's core, a very rare treasure. The elixir was a liquid essence formed from earth stones after absorbing the primordial chi of the heavens and earth for thousands of years. The elixir could improve cultivation talents when consumed, but it was only effective on talents of intermediate rank downwards. In addition, there was a small chance that the mordile earth stone, which also improves cultivation talents from a high rank to a low one, might exist near where the elixir was being produced. Ye Tian thinks that that monster snake from before should have been able to become such a monster using the earth core elixir, and is surprised by this because he never imagined that he would collect such a powerful item so easily. Yu hands the elixir to Ye Tian and says that since this thing could improve talents, it will definitely help them, but the protagonist replies that he doesn't need it anymore, but would instead make you even stronger with it, and suggests that she drink it. Yu is shocked by her brother's words. After all, she hasn't even been able to awaken to have the chance to drink something like this, and wonders if it wouldn't be a waste to drink it. But Yu's status window said that she now had a second-class cultivation talent and a novice-level ice talent that was still dormant. Ye Tian thought that since her talent was at second class, if she drank the earth core elixir, it would certainly improve, but they didn't know how much yet. Yu suggests that they could sell the elixir to get a lot of money by selling something that powerful. In the book it says that there is something more powerful called the earth stone where the earth core elixir originated, but Ye Tian had destroyed the place. When the buyer asked about the earth stones, he could only say that there weren't any, but he certainly wouldn't believe him, so everything would lead to murder. Yu asks why Ye Tian had destroyed the stone and says that it was a real shame that it had happened, and he replies that if she doesn't drink the elixir it would be even more of a real shame. So Ye Tian forces his sister to drink the elixir even though she complains all the time about everything, and she even chokes despite commenting that the temperature of the elixir was strangely warm and had interesting effects. Ye Tian wondered what was going on and why her cultivation talent was still second-rate, and if the book was wrong. Yu said she was a bit tired and would cook for Ye Tian when she woke up, and he agreed, replying that he could go ahead and rest. The protagonist continues to wonder what the problem was and why nothing happened, but he could still wait a little longer because it could be that the drug hasn't had any effect on his body yet. An hour later, Ye Tian suddenly realized that her talent wave was extraordinarily strong, and now her cultivation talent had reached the medium level, rising 2 levels. A medium talent cultivation plus a rare ice talent was something that could only prove that Yu would become a high-level warrior in the future. Ye Tian thought he really couldn't lose to Xiaobei and decided to drink the beast's blood, complaining that it tasted even worse than the elixir before. But apart from that, Ye Tian could now also eat what he had wanted to eat since he was in the cave. He wondered how much he could improve with the blood of a mid-level furious beast, and decided to try it using physical training practice as well. Ye Tian was shocked to realize that he had managed to improve 8 times as much, and it seemed that the effects of the blood of a mid-level furious beast were terrible, and if he could have enough blood, he would be able to conquer the warrior level within a month. It was a shame because he only had 2 more bottles of that, and he wondered what he should do. The scene cut to the 5th Academy in the woods 10 days later, where Ye Tian continued to train his skills to the maximum. Suddenly, Bao rushes in desperately, leaving the protagonist confused by the shouting, and Bao mentions Xiaobei's name, making Ye Tian think he was there. But Bao denies it and says that he left to pursue his warrior level and was certainly saying that he was harboring evil intentions now, and was surely just hoping to become a warrior before going after Ye Tian for revenge. Bao was outraged that Ye Tian was still still sitting there super calm as if it was no big deal, and the protagonist replied that he had thought that Xiaobei had shown up to challenge him, but instead he seemed to have stepped away to take a leave of absence. The protagonist thinks he's had a good look at Xiaobei and his talent was also at medium level, and to reach warrior level he'd need about a month. Bao says that if Xiaobei really does become a warrior, dealing with Ye Tian would be like stepping on ants, and the protagonist replies that he has also been training a lot and so it wasn't as if he was relaxing. Bao insists on the subject because Xiaobei was a disciple with a great track record and plenty of resources, while Ye Tian only had those 3 bottles of mid-level beast blood, and surely they should be running out by now. The protagonist agrees that the blood has run out, and Bao replies that as a good friend, he will take care of what's left of Ye Tian's body after Xiaobei has finished with him, and also of his sister. The protagonist thought he only had the low-level blood of the striped snake and the blood of the heart left, and when he used them, he thought he would reach the highest level of the apprentice level. It might be a step away from the warrior, but it was impossible to achieve it, but with the talent of speed and the talent of his fencing, he could certainly become capable of facing someone who was a warrior. Meanwhile, in the Mo family, Xiaobei has just become warrior level, becoming even more powerful than before. Xiaobei's father shows up to see him and realizes that he has finally managed to become a warrior, making him very proud because he really was like his son at heart. Mon, Xiaobei's father, was the foundation of the Mo family's wealth and one of the 10 elders of the Middle Elite Warrior Level Elders Association, and said that his son was doing well, and Xiaobei assured his father that he would never bring shame on his family, and says that this was a fact and that the elder even told him to reward him personally, and it was all thanks to him and the help of the elders, and tells a subordinate to look at the dishes that have been prepared in the kitchen, but Xiaobei says that he could see for himself, and tells his son to take care to eat later because he will prepare his favorite foods to celebrate, and Xiaobei thanks his father for that. When the father leaves, Xiaobei asks the subordinate if he carefully investigated the thing he left in his hands before being isolated, and the subordinate agrees because Ye Tian had no parents and no one to rely on, so they could bully him all they wanted. Xiaobei says that Ye Tian was a piece of trash with no track record, even though he thought that at least he could have had someone powerful backing him up all this time, and if that was the case, then they just needed to get someone to kill him. The subordinate says that the base was different from the jungle, and if you just kill as you please, no matter how powerful the family was, there would still be big problems as a result. Xiaobei asks him again who he let use the Mo family name to kill. After all, they could only go out to look for a shadow killer, perhaps a special shadow killer. The subordinate replies that to hire a shadow assassin, they would need at least $1 million, and asks if spending that much just to get rid of a ridiculous kid would be worth it, and Xiaobei angrily replies that he really was a poor servant, as he must think like a poor person to worry so much about money to that extent. Xiaobei says that the seafront base was so vast and yet only a few families could manage to prosper while others became slaves, and it was all because when they discovered a genius among the poor they killed him immediately. The subordinate realizes that the 5th Academy doesn't exist to cultivate talent, but to conquer the weak, and that's how the world works. Back in the woods of the 5th Academy, Ye Tian was training his powers to the maximum before deciding to return home in the rain. On the way, a system window suddenly appears on top of a lamppost, and he is confused to know what was going on and what it was, and realizes that it was written inside the window that it belonged to a human called Li Cun, with a second-class cultivation talent and a beginner-level shadow talent. Cun attacks the protagonist, and he quickly protects himself from the attack, asking who it was that was trying to attack him so suddenly, and Cun replies that it was someone who had come for his life just now. Ye Tian wonders if it was an assassin hired by Xiaobei, and wonders what was going on, because if Xiaobei has become a martial warrior, he could easily go and fight him, and he wonders why he has to resort to such a dishonest method, but Cun just keeps going at Ye Tian without a second thought. Thus began a battle between the two, and the protagonist was always surprised because Cun had the ability to disappear and appear from the shadows, and it seemed that his shadow talent was the kind that could make him invisible. Despite this, Cun was also surprised that a mere martial arts apprentice was strangely fast enough to dodge his attack, and Ye Tian was ready to attack the assassin. Although they were both managing to deal with each other well, Ye Tian always ended up having problems because Cun was always invisible, and it was the kind of power that would be very difficult for an ordinary person to deal with, but against him it was completely useless. And so Ye Tian took down his opponent after some time, leaving the assassin stunned because it seemed impossible, as even an elite warrior wouldn't be able to see through his talent. Cun asks how he was able to do something like that, and Ye Tian replies that if he really wanted to know the truth, he should first answer his question of who it was that sent him to kill him. Cun laughs and says he'll only answer when he's on his last breath, and so the two start fighting again, only for Ye Tian to trap Cun again with his skills, asking again who had sent him after him. Cun laughs, saying that he was the strongest martial apprentice he had ever met in his life, and congratulates him on it. Cun finally decides to tell the truth and reveals that it was Mo Xiaobei who sent him, which infuriates targets Ye Tian. The protagonist then touches Cun's body and successfully steals his shadow talent, now also acquiring his new novice rank shadow talent in his status window. After leaving Cun's body behind in the rain, he thinks that humans shouldn't be like fallen leaves, left to the mercy of the wind and rain. And so Ye Tian intended to live his life the way a man should, and in a world like this, he would be like the wind and the rain, and never like a fallen leaf. Ye Tian returned home to rest, taking all of Cun's belongings with him. He was carrying two swords that were probably primordial weapons, and as Ye Tian's sword had been completely ruined, the ones he was using were practically untouched. In addition, he found a gold card with 1 million on it, a white card with 100,000 on it, and all this gave a total of 3.5 million. Ye Tian laughs and says that he would make good use of the money Xiao Bei spent to take his life, but he also ends up finding a strange book called Shadow Blades. The protagonist is surprised because this was a bronze level knife technique, which was a good thing. Blade techniques could unlock the full power of someone's blade talent, and that was exactly what he needed. Ye Tian decides that he could learn and test right now and starts reading, but suddenly he remembers and wonders why his sister Yu hasn't come back yet. When Xiao Bei sent someone to kill him, he must have known everything about his life and family, which worried him about what might have happened to Yu because there was a great chance that she had been murdered too. Ye Tian rushed out, hoping that Yu was alright, to the city center, an ordinary high school. He looked around for his sister, thinking that this was just an ordinary school and people with talents couldn't just show up and kill students without a second thought. Still, Ye Tian wonders how Xiao Bei would respect and follow such a basic rule of martial warriors, and suddenly he senses a powerful presence nearby and tells her not to move, threatening her. But suddenly Yu reveals that this presence was herself, leaving Ye Tian confused and asking what she was doing and why it took her so long, and she replies that she was on duty that day and cleaning the rooms. Yu asks what happened to his brother and why he didn't bring an umbrella or put on shoes because he was totally wet, and Ye Tian replies nervously that he just forgot because he was in a hurry, and she says that anyway, she wanted to know how he made that cool move so quickly before because she was curious. But still, the one who was watching the whole conversation was Xiao Bei himself, who wondered why Ye Tian was still alive until now. The brothers go out to buy something to eat and Yu picks up some sausages to eat on the way home. Ye Tian then asks her what she would like to eat that night because she was going to cook, and she replies that they could go with their trademark, which was slices of boiled meat. On the way back, the protagonist realized that they were being followed by someone along the way, even though they didn't know who it was that was following them. When they got home, Yu helped them get dinner ready and told him to help her set the table now so they could eat, and Ye Tian agreed that he was going to help her even when he saw that there was a strange car outside the house. The next day, Yu went to class as normal and was a model student in front of all her classmates, and Ye Tian was keeping a close eye on the whole process. It's been 3 days in a row since that same car kept passing by them, but even more specifically it was following Yu. Ye Tian says that daring to hurt even his little sister was something that would surely have made them lose the thread completely at once, but to his surprise the car that was parked starts to leave the parking lot. So the protagonist decides to follow him through the city until the car stops at a building, and he wonders if this was the meeting place they had arranged. At the site, Xiao Bei's subordinates were beating a man with their fists even though he was shouting that he had no more money to give them, claiming that he had sworn to pay them as soon as he got enough money and begging them to leave. Xiao Bei replied that if he couldn't pay now, it would be double the next day. After all, money didn't grow on trees. The man replies that Xiao Bei's interest was very high and he really couldn't pay today as he had elderly parents and a small child to look after, and asks again so that he can leave just in time when the subordinate who was driving Xiao Bei's car arrives to talk to them. Xiao Bei asks if he's had any news of the shadow killer, and the subordinate replies that he hasn't been able to contact the shadow killer and would try to contact him again through someone else. Ye Tian realizes, observing using his shadow ability, that the assassin was indeed sent by Xiao Bei. Xiao Bei says that it could be that some people think that descendants of wealthy families like him are easy to trick, which wasn't the case. He then begins to beat the man in front of his eyes with his own body. The subordinate replies that he would never dare to do anything like that and that he would serve him faithfully and that he never even dared to think about that kind of thing, and another subordinate says that the man who was beaten was killed by Xiao Bei's hands. Xiao Bei told him to get rid of him and asked what they would do with Ye Tian's sister, and the subordinate replied that he was planning to entrust it to a friend who had just got out of jail, but now it seemed that leaving things to others might be a mistake. That's why he intended to take care of the problem himself first and Xiao Bei wouldn't have to worry about any of it. But Xiao Bei attacks his subordinate, leaving him confused by his actions, and Xiao Bei explains that this was the punishment for not doing his job properly. He picks up a primordial weapon to attack his subordinate just in time for Ye Tian to appear and jump on Xiao Bei. In the process, they exchanged quick blows and Ye Tian even ended up getting a scratch on the face, and now it looked like the great battle between the two warriors was about to begin.